Chinaza had always carried the weight of her little family on her shoulders, working long hours and sacrificing her own dreams, so that her daughter could have a life filled with comfort she herself never knew. But one evening, the house filled with tension when Ayanda, her teenage daughter, stood before her, angry and frustrated. "You don't understand my life, Mum," she shouted, her voice trembling with both pain and rebellion, before storming out of the house. Chinaza stood frozen, the words cutting through her like a knife, leaving her heart heavy and her eyes wet. She sat alone in the quiet, haunted by memories she had buried deep, remembering the lonely battles she fought when she was just a young girl. Later that week, while dusting the attic, her hand brushed against a small wooden box hidden behind old bags. She pulled it out and sat down, her heart beating faster. Inside, she discovered an envelope she had once written long ago, sealed and marked with the words, "To my future daughter." Her hands shook as she opened it, realizing it was the voice of her younger self reaching across time. The letter began with raw pain, telling the story of how her own parents had abandoned her when she needed them most. She wrote about relatives who judged her, forcing her into hard labor as a maid at just 15, and the endless nights she cried herself to sleep, wishing someone could see her hurt. Her writing carried the sorrow of her first love, Obina, who had promised forever but left her the moment she became pregnant. She poured out the humiliation, the loneliness, and the betrayal that nearly broke her. Yet the words also held fire. She described how, even while carrying a child alone, she refused to give in to despair. She worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs, swallowing humiliation, but never letting go of the vow that her baby would live a better life than she had. When another clash erupted with Ayanda, Chinaza finally placed the letter in her daughter's hands. The girl sat in silence, her eyes filling with tears as she read every line. Slowly, the walls between them crumbled. She rushed into her mother's arms, whispering through sobs, "I never knew. I thought you couldn't understand me." From that day, their bond grew stronger. At a family gathering, when bitter relatives mocked Chinaza for her past, Ayanda stood tall, her voice fierce, defending the woman who had given her everything. Shock spread through the room when Chinaza calmly revealed how those struggles had pushed her to quietly build her own empire, with thriving businesses and properties no one had known about. Pride lit Ayanda's face as she held her mother's hand, and Chinaza spoke words that silenced everyone. "I never wanted you to repeat my tears. I only wanted you to see my strength." The moment ended with applause, tears, and the sight of mother and daughter walking together into a future brighter than either could have dreamed. Later, while cleaning the dusty attic, Chinaza's hand brushed against something hard and hidden beneath a pile of old clothes. She pulled out a small wooden box, its surface scratched but still strong, a forgotten piece of her past. Her heart raced as she set it down and slowly opened it. Inside lay faded trinkets, little reminders of the girl she used to be, and among them was a sealed envelope. Her breath caught when she saw the words written in her own handwriting, "To my future daughter." Her fingers trembled as she held it close, memories flooding back of the day she wrote it, never knowing when it might be read. She sat on the floor with the box by her side, staring at the envelope for a long time. It felt like a message from another life, from the frightened teenager she had once been, reaching out to the woman and mother she had become. She remembered the pain of that time, the loneliness that pressed on her chest, and the small hope she had carried, believing that one day her daughter would know her story. Her eyes filled with tears as she traced the old handwriting, realizing how much of her past she had kept hidden, even from Ayanda. Holding the letter, she felt torn between fear and courage. Part of her wanted to keep it sealed, afraid of reopening wounds that had taken years to heal. Yet another part of her knew the letter had been written for this very moment, for the daughter who now doubted her understanding. She whispered to herself, "Maybe it's time." The attic around her grew silent, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for her decision. With shaking hands, she placed the envelope gently back into the box, closing the lid. She would not read it yet, but the weight of its presence filled her heart with both dread and hope. For the first time in years, she felt the girl she once was standing beside her, urging her to be brave, reminding her that the struggles of yesterday were meant to guide her child today. She wiped her tears, holding the wooden box close to her chest, knowing that the secret she had carried for so long was about to change everything between her and Ayanda. The letter reveals how Chinaza was abandoned by her parents, left to face the world with no love or guidance. She wrote about the day they walked away, the sound of the door closing behind them echoing in her ears, making her feel unwanted and forgotten. Relatives who should have cared only saw her as a burden. They judged her harshly, whispering cruel words, mocking her dreams, and treating her as if she had no worth. Instead of being sheltered, she was pushed into servitude, sent to work as a maid at just 15 years old, scrubbing floors and washing dishes while her peers still attended school. Each night after long hours of labor, she would crawl into bed exhausted, tears wetting her pillow as she wondered why life had turned so cold. She described how it hurt to see other girls laughing with their families, while she stood outside, carrying buckets and facing insults. In the letter, she admitted how often she wished for just one person to listen to her, to tell her that her pain mattered. But no one came. The silence of her loneliness became her closest companion. She wrote about the hunger that gnawed at her when food was withheld, the shame of wearing torn clothes, and the bitterness of being treated as though she was invisible. Every insult burned. Every order reminded her of how powerless she was. She poured out how she would stare at the night sky, speaking to the stars, asking them to carry her sorrow to someone who could understand. Her words on the page carried the voice of a girl fighting to survive when the world had turned its back. Yet, even in the middle of her suffering, there was a spark that refused to die. She confessed that while her heart broke daily, she whispered to herself that she was meant for more. Though life dragged her down, she dreamed quietly of a day she would rise. A day when her story would not just be about pain but about strength. The letter was not just an account of wounds. It was a cry from a young girl who, despite abandonment and humiliation, refused to let her spirit be completely crushed. That cry, now in her daughter's hands, was proof that even the deepest scars could one day inspire healing. The letter recalls her first love, Obinna, the boy who once made her heart believe in magic. She wrote about how he came into her life like a ray of light when everything else felt dark. He told her sweet words, promised her forever, and made her believe that she had finally found someone who would never walk away. She remembered the way he held her hand and swore he would stand by her side no matter what happened. For the first time, she thought she had a reason to dream, to imagine a life where she wasn't alone. But her dreams began to crumble the moment she found out she was carrying his child. She described the fear that rushed through her body when she told him, expecting comfort, but instead watching the color drain from his face. The boy who had promised forever suddenly pulled away, his voice cold, his steps distant. Obinna left her without looking back, leaving her to face a storm she never asked for. The letter revealed how she stood alone in the silence, abandoned once more, but this time by the person she had trusted most. She poured out the shame that followed her like a shadow. Relatives whispered louder, neighbors pointed, and the world treated her as though she was a mistake. She spoke about walking down the street with eyes staring at her, some filled with pity, others with judgment, all reminding her of the betrayal that had shattered her heart. Even the people who had once laughed with her now avoided her, as though her condition made her untouchable. The isolation was the hardest part. She explained how she sat alone at night, her hand on her stomach, whispering to the tiny life inside her, promising that no matter who left, she would stay. The nights were long, filled with silent tears, and the days were heavy, filled with endless tasks. Still, her words carried both grief and determination. She admitted how broken she felt, yet also how the betrayal became a turning point. Though Obinna abandoned her, she vowed never to abandon her child. She wrote about how the pain of being left gave her a new kind of strength. Her love for the baby growing inside her became her reason to endure the shame, to survive the isolation, and to rise again from the ruins of betrayal. The letter turned her heartbreak into a promise of resilience. Chinaza's letter details how she refused to give up, working multiple jobs while pregnant, even when her body was weak and her heart was heavy. She described how mornings began before sunrise, scrubbing floors in one house, then rushing to wash clothes in another, before spending evenings selling small items by the roadside. Her back ached, her hands blistered, but she pressed on because she carried more than herself. She carried hope for the little life inside her. Each job brought insults, each day brought stares, yet she swallowed her pain and kept moving. She explained how humiliation became part of her daily existence. Some mocked her swollen belly, others called her names, questioning her worth. She wrote about being treated as though she was invisible, except when someone wanted to remind her of her shame. There were days she was given the worst tasks, nights when she went to bed hungry because her pay was stolen or cut short. But in every moment, she reminded herself that her child deserved more than pity. She wanted her baby to grow up free from the chains she had known. Her words painted a picture of quiet strength. She spoke about working in silence, whispering prayers under her breath as she cleaned, promising that her child would never see the darkness she had endured. Even when exhaustion left her trembling, she refused to lie down. She told herself over and over that survival was not just for her. It was for the future she carried. She wrote about saving every coin she could, hiding little amounts away, dreaming of a day when those savings would build a foundation for her child's life. The shame others tried to throw at her became fuel for her determination. She explained how she learned to hold her head high even when people laughed, because she knew she was fighting for something greater. The letter revealed how strength was not about smiling through pain, but about continuing despite it. She admitted how many times she wanted to break down, yet each time she looked at her growing belly, she found courage to keep going. Her vow was simple but powerful. Her child would never suffer the way she had suffered. That promise became her shield, her reason to rise again every morning. Through hardship, she shaped a future not of despair but of resilience, proving that love could turn even the deepest wounds into unshakable strength. Chinaza hesitates but finally gives the letter to Ayanda after another heated argument, her hands trembling as she places the envelope in her daughter's palm. For a moment Ayanda stares at it, confused and angry, but curiosity softens her face. She tears it open and begins to read, her eyes moving slowly across the faded words, her breath catching as the story unfolds. The room falls silent, every sound fading except the soft rustle of paper and the pounding of her heart. As she reads, tears begin to form. At first small drops that blur the ink, then streams that fall freely down her cheeks. She reads about abandonment, about her mother working at 15, about the betrayal that left her broken yet still fighting. Each sentence cuts deep, showing her that the woman she thought could never understand her struggles had once carried far heavier burdens. Her hands shake as she holds the letter tighter, almost as if afraid to let go of the voice of her mother's younger self. The more she reads, the more her walls crumble. She remembers all the times she shouted, "You don't understand me," and now realizes how wrong she had been. The loneliness described in the letter mirrors the emptiness she sometimes feels. The pain of betrayal echoes the sting of teenage rejection she thought her mother could never relate to. Every word feels alive, reaching across years to tell her, "I know your pain because I once lived it too." By the time she finishes, her face is soaked with tears. She looks up, and her mother is standing there, silent, her eyes filled with both fear and love. For a moment, neither speaks, the air heavy with unspoken emotions. Then Ayanda rises slowly, walks across the room, and throws her arms around her mother. She sobs into her chest, whispering through broken words, "I never knew. I thought you couldn't understand me." Chinaza holds her close, her own tears falling, relief washing over her like a wave. In that embrace, the distance that had stood between them begins to fade. The letter has done what words and anger never could. It has opened their hearts to each other. What was once division becomes connection, a bond built not on arguments but on shared pain and new understanding. Ayanda hugs her mother tightly, her arms clinging as though she never wants to let go, whispering through her tears, "I never knew. I thought you couldn't understand me." The words break the silence that had once stood like a wall between them. Chinaza feels her daughter's sobs against her chest, and her own tears spill over, falling freely, washing away the pain of all the arguments. For the first time in so long, they are no longer mother and daughter standing apart, but two souls meeting in their shared hurt and hidden strength. Their cries mix together, filling the room with the sound of release, a sound that carries both pain and healing. Chinaza strokes Ayanda's hair gently, whispering soothing words she once wished someone had spoken to her when she was young and lost. She feels her daughter's grip tighten, and it tells her more than words ever could, that Ayanda finally sees her, not just as a strict mother, but as a woman who has walked through fire and survived. Ayanda pulls back slightly, her eyes swollen, her cheeks wet, but there is a new light in her gaze. She looks at her mother not with anger, but with deep respect. The letter has opened her heart, showing her the battles her mother fought silently, the sacrifices she never spoke about. The daughter who once shouted that no one understood her now realizes she has always been understood in the deepest way possible. Chinaza wipes her daughter's tears with trembling hands, smiling through her own sorrow. She whispers softly, "All I ever wanted was to protect you from the pain I knew too well." Those words sink into Alanna's heart, filling the space where resentment used to live. She leans into her mother's arms again, holding on as though she has found the safest place in the world. The walls that once divided them crumble completely, leaving nothing but love standing tall. Their hearts beat together, no longer separated by misunderstanding, but bound by truth. The air between them feels lighter, as though a storm has finally passed. In that tender moment, both realize they have gained something far greater than they lost in their fights, an unshakable bond. It is no longer just the love of a mother and daughter. It is the connection of two survivors who now walk side by side, holding each other's strength. At a family reunion, jealous relatives mock Chinaza, saying she failed at life, their words sharp and filled with scorn. They laugh at her past struggles, whispering loudly about how she was abandoned, how she worked as a maid, how she had to raise a child alone. Some shake their heads, pretending to pity her, while others smirk as if her life was nothing more than a story of mistakes. The air fills with judgment, and the sting of humiliation tries to creep back into her heart. But before Chinaza can respond, Alanna rises to her feet, her eyes blazing with fire. Her voice trembles at first, but then it grows strong, cutting through the mocking laughter. She says loudly, "My mother is the strongest woman I know. You call her a failure, but to me, she is the reason I stand here today. She gave me everything she never had, and she fought battles none of you could survive." The room falls quiet, shocked at the teenager's courage. Alanna's words pour out like a flood, fierce and proud. She tells them that while others mocked, her mother was building her strength. While they judged, her mother was sacrificing. While they laughed, her mother was teaching her what real love and resilience look like. Every sentence strikes deep, silencing even the boldest critic. Relatives who moments ago smirked now shift uncomfortably in their seats, unable to meet her gaze. Chinaza watches her daughter with tears brimming, her heart swelling with pride. The same girl who once shouted that her mother did not understand her is now her greatest defender. She feels a warmth spread through her chest, stronger than any insult thrown her way. Alanna finishes with a final steady voice saying, "You see failure, but I see victory. You see shame, but I see strength. My mother is not someone to mock, she is someone to admire." The silence that follows is heavy, broken only by the sound of Chinaza drawing a deep, steady breath. For the first time, Chinaza does not need to fight her own battles. Her daughter has taken the stand for her. And in that moment, surrounded by those who once looked down on her, she feels not small, but powerful, carried higher by the fierce pride of the child she once fought so hard to raise. Chinaza reveals that the hardships in the letter pushed her to secretly build a small business empire, her calm voice cutting through the silence after Alanna's bold defense. Every mocking relative leans forward, their eyes wide with disbelief. As she begins to speak, she explains that the struggles which once seemed like chains became the very fuel that drove her to rise. She tells them how, while they mocked her, she was learning how to turn pain into power, saving every coin and investing carefully, little by little, until her dreams began to take shape. The room grows tense as she shares how she started with almost nothing, selling clothes by the roadside, designing simple pieces with her own hands, and slowly building trust with customers. What they never knew was that those small steps grew into something far greater. She lifts her chin with quiet pride and announces that today she owns multiple properties across the city, each one standing as proof of her resilience. Whispers ripple through the room, faces shifting from arrogance to shock. Then she reveals the greatest surprise. The woman they once dismissed as a failure is now the founder of a thriving fashion brand. Her designs worn by people they admire, her business employing dozens of workers who depend on her strength. The very relatives who once sneered at her now sit speechless, realizing they had been mocking someone who had surpassed them in every way. Alanna's eyes sparkle with admiration as she listens, her chest swelling with pride. She stands even taller beside her mother, her face glowing with the joy of knowing that the woman she defended is not only strong but successful beyond what anyone imagined. The girl who once doubted her now sees her as a hero, a true example of courage and determination. Gasps echo around the room, and the once laughing relatives struggle to hide their embarrassment. Chinaza does not gloat or raise her voice. She simply speaks her truth, her calm confidence louder than any insult. For the first time, those who judge her fall silent, their pride shattered by the reality of her success. In that moment, Chinaza transforms in their eyes, not the abandoned girl, not the struggling mother, but a powerful woman who turned every scar into a stepping stone. What was once hidden now shines openly, leaving everyone stunned by the empire she quietly built from nothing. Ayanda stands proudly beside her mother, her hand gently wrapped around Chinaza's, her eyes glowing with pride and love. The same girl who once shouted in anger now looks at her with nothing but admiration. Relatives who mocked fall into silence, their judgment replaced by awe, unable to believe the woman they once dismissed has risen so high. Chinaza lifts her head, her voice steady and filled with emotion, and speaks words that echo through the room. I never wanted you to repeat my tears. I only wanted you to see my strength. Her voice carries not just to her daughter, but to everyone present, a reminder that pain can be turned into power. The words strike deeply, leaving even her critics unable to respond. Ayanda squeezes her mother's hand tighter, her heart swelling with gratitude for the sacrifices that had shaped her life. Together, they stand as proof that no wound is too deep to heal, no struggle too heavy to overcome. The air feels lighter, charged with respect that no one can deny anymore. Tears shimmer in Ayanda's eyes, but this time they are not born of anger or confusion. They are tears of love, of understanding, of pride. She leans against her mother, smiling through them, knowing she now carries not just her own dreams, but the legacy of a woman who turned pain into victory. Chinaza feels the warmth of her daughter's presence, and knows her fight has not been in vain. The bond between them, once bruised, now shines unbreakable, strengthened by truth and trust. As the gathering draws to a close, the image of mother and daughter walking side by side becomes a picture no one will ever forget. They walk with their heads held high, not defeated by judgment but lifted by respect, carrying a story that will be told long after. What began as conflict has ended in healing, leaving behind an example of love that refuses to break, no matter the trials. Hi, besties, sparkling heart sparkles, thank you so much for watching this emotional journey till the end. Cherry Blossom, please don't forget to like, thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comments, speech balloon, and hit that subscribe button bell, so you never miss more touching stories like this. Two hearts, see you next time. Waving hand.